Here's my $700 Ironman Canada bag from Whistler. Inside here, my mason jar full of tears, which I've talked about in the past. And this is actually what I wanted to show you guys. This is an Ironman Kids Finishers medal, and that race actually only cost about 20 bucks. And these are just metal files. You can actually get this from, your local hardware store. And if you don't want to actually pay for that $20, you can do what I did and just steal this from, some unsuspecting kid. And I think it turned out pretty well. I mean, I feel a little bit bad for that 7-year-old girl that I stole the medal from, but it kind of feels like a life lesson or something. Don't trust disgruntled triathletes, I guess. What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? How are you guys doing? My name is Matt LeGrand, and a few weeks back, I was doing the last long bike ride for my big race, the Ironman Canada race in Whistler. And so I was doing my last 100-mile ride. And what happened was the stem on my Trek Speed Concept just snapped in half while I was going slightly downhill. So I was going, fast enough that I took a bit of a beating, on my right shoulder here. And quickly after that, it was off to the emergency room. And although I didn't break my collarbone, I do have what's called a piano key deformity, which is something new that I will have with me for the rest of my life. But it's basically just, this shoulder separation bit here. So I've been rehabbing that, and I'm getting better every day. But one thing I did do shortly after that was fire off an email to the Ironman organization, the race organization, and just let them know that there was pretty much no way that I was going to be able to compete in the Ironman race. I knew that I had paid for the deferral option within the race registrations, so I was kind of curious as to what my options were going to be for this race. So after a few emails back and forth, what they finally sent me was just a message just kind of saying unfortunately, the deadline has passed. Actually, let me just read the exact message that they sent. Unfortunately, the withdrawal deadline for the receipt of the stated partial refund, deferral, and a transfer was on June 13th. As stated, the deadline to withdraw and receive a partial refund, transfer, or defer has since passed. We received numerous requests, all for the sincerest reasons regarding the exception to our policy. As difficult as it is, we must adhere to the policies in place. And I posted a whole bunch of really nice stuff about Ironman in my video last week. I'll link to it up here. But it kind of got me thinking, maybe Ironman isn't the happiest place on earth. I know that's Disney, but let's take a look at a few quick reasons why you should race your local triathlon instead of flying off and racing some sort of Ironman branded event. Meeting local triathletes. This past weekend, I was at a race, just kind of watching a race, and I met two athletes from Germany. They were new in town. They came to the local race just to kind of meet a couple people and just get plugged into the triathlon community. And it was fantastic. They were super cool, and I just kind of let them know who they could go out and train with, which groups they could join, safe places to ride and swim, and just other events and things like that they could check out. So being a part of this local race community just means that you get to meet fantastic people from your area. And I found the people that I've trained with tend to be the best friends that I've made in my life. Short travel time. In my other video, I talked about kind of these destinations that you get to go to. And while that's great, there is something special about waking up in your own bed and being able to drive 30, 45 minutes to your local triathlon race. I tend to sleep better and just feel better not dealing with all of that travel anxiety, kind of the week building up to your big Ironman race. Your local races need you. It seems to me that numbers within triathlon have been declining lately, and I really think that your local triathlon needs you at this point. Races are extremely hard to put on. They're very long hours, on the weekends, and these race directors are trying to set event fees, as low as possible. But what ends up happening is the margins, the profit margins, just end up being like super razor thin for these events. And it gets to be really difficult for these races to make a profit. So if we want these races to stick around, I really do think that we need to go ahead, sign up for these races, and make sure that we support our local race events. Race cutoff times. So Ironman has these cutoff times. So they're cutoff times for both swimming, biking, and then the final cutoff time for the total race. And I totally understand why they do it. They have to clear the roads, and they just have to call the race over at some point during the day. But one thing that I like about some of the local races that I do is that they don't actually have cutoff times. And I know I'm a pretty competitive triathlete and I don't actually have to worry too much about cutoff times, but I really don't like this kind of better than thou. These triathletes are official finishers and you're not because you didn't finish in a certain amount of time. In my opinion, I actually think it's really cool when races celebrate their slower finishers. And I personally don't think that our sport can afford to alienate anyone at this point. So I think not having cutoff times is actually super helpful. Customer service. Earlier in the video, I mentioned just kind of the response I got from Ironman when trying to deal with their customer service. And what I wanted to do just to compare was also send an email to the local triathlon event company here in town. And let me read you their response. Okay, so I sent them an email the week of the race, of the Columbia River Classic race, and they actually did struggle to get back to me just because they were actually on the course setting up for the race. When they did respond, here's what they said. I can absolutely do the deferral for you. I will take care of this for you as soon as I'm back in the office on Monday. So super cool of them, just without even thinking about it, no problem, just to take care of it without even blinking an eye. Do you want to do this race next year? No problem, we can take care of that for you. Just really good customer service. And I know all local race events aren't gonna be like this, but when you find a race that does give customer service, I think it's good for us to kind of go ahead and go the extra mile and support these local races. Race entry fees. The final reason that I have for you to race local instead of going and racing some sort of Ironman branded event is just that the pricing is almost always better. For me, doing some of these local races, the most it might cost might be $200 or something like that. And I just looked at Ironman pricing, really kind of starting at $700 or so and going up to $800. So, that just doesn't add up to me, how a race can be, 4 to 5 times as expensive just because it's an Ironman branded event. And I do know that the Ironman races are bigger and that there's a lot more that goes into them, but the local races here are actually very good as well. And so as I think about the fact that I'm probably gonna have to buy a new race bike, just the thought of having to spend an extra $700, $800, just to enter a race, really doesn't jive that well with me at this point. So quick question for you guys. Do you guys race local races at all, or do you guys mostly stick to Ironman branded events? Take your time, comment below. I would love to hear all about it. And if you're into this sort of stuff, and that would be swimming, biking, or running, consider subscribing to the channel. There's a little subscribe button down below here somewhere. There's also a notification bell that just allows you to be notified of whenever I post new videos, which I try to do about once per week. All right, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and we will see you guys on the next one.